So welcome to Navigate. This is our last Navigate for 2020, and we are ready to actually have a brilliant session with none other than the one, the only Sharran Srivatsaa. Sharran, great to have you here.
Michael, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And look, as we go through this, if there are questions that you've got or perspectives that you'd like to take on board, please pop those into chat so we can see them, or into the Q&A, whichever works for you. And Sharran, today is important, I think, because we're heading towards the end of the year, lots of changes happening around the world. And if there was ever a time that we need leadership and direction, and that word that you were talking about earlier, focus on the main aim of the game, it is now. And, I'm big on, what you can control, what you can influence, and what's outside of that. So I know today we're going to be really drilling into what can we control, what can we influence? Yeah, there's a lot of things outside that we can't control and can't influence, but let's play the game of what we can do. And in a message I sent to you earlier today is I'd love us to do two things. And one of my favorite metaphors is the windscreen and the rear vision mirror. So, looking back in the rear vision mirror and reflecting on, well, what is it that we can learn from the past? And, you've had this extraordinary success in terms of the tellers, and that's one of your many kind of successes and business ventures that you've been involved in. And when you grow from 45 agents to 600 agents in 5 years, that's an incredible achievement in any business. So, and then obviously looking forward into 2021, what are the key things we need to put into play? It's a bit of a frame for this. Rear vision mirror first, and then actually let's look out through the windscreen and start to see where we heading from there. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'm seriously looking forward to hearing your perspective and insights. It's always a pleasure to have someone that I think is just an incredibly smart, switched on, focused, making things complex, from complex to simple, and starting to see how we can actually apply it. So thank you.
No, awesome. And thank you. And Michael, I'll tell you, I think you have shown me a lot of this, which is we don't really know, we can't really codify a lot of what we are learning or have learned or what's in place while we are in it a lot of times. And so even during the TELUS experience, call it 7 to 10 plus years of all of that happened, I actually think I missed many things because I didn't do it in a regular way. All my learning was post. I stopped after the exit, after I was done, and almost tried to recount and recap and revisit and codify those learnings. And I think I grabbed many of them, but I actually feel like, and it's okay, I actually feel like I missed, I didn't grab many of them because I didn't do it often enough. So the very fact that we are pausing to saying, hey, can I look back a little bit? And we always have noticed this, and I think it was an analogy that you told me, the windshields are the ones that get dirty. The rear view mirrors are like, have perfect clarity, right? Like, yeah, you may need to just clean out your windshield from time to time, but your rear view mirror is ultra clear. And so, which is fascinating for us. And I think that's why if we can do some, even if it's small, kind of just do it for yourself. And I'll give you this one quick analogy. Like someone asked me today, hey, why are you writing your book? And so this is a labor of love. You and I probably have 17 unfinished books right now, right? And a big thing that came out for me was just two big things, and very, very personal. One was, I believe that we are a lot more articulate, a lot more organized with our thoughts and our ideas, so that we can take those learnings forward into the future if we stop to actually do that, right? That's really powerful. Like a lot of times when I interview people, those that present often like you, those that make ideas, synthesize them often like you, or those that have written books, are two sets of people who, when you actually interview them and they present in a much more structured, logical way that can be assimilated well. Otherwise, you hear great stories, but they're not structured very well. So if there's one analogy that I give everybody, the windshield can get dirty, but your rear view mirror is perfectly perfectly clear. And many of these lessons I have learned were mostly in retrospect, when I did the retrospective of what worked, what didn't work, what did I learn. And I wish I'd done that more often. I don't know if you can, if you can talk to that at all.
Well, Sharran, what's fascinating with this is I think a lot of the time when we're with a friend, they'll ask, how are you going? And you'll go, whether you might go politics, you'll go sport, those kind of things. But in actual fact, I think when great coaches connect with you, we're going to ask questions like, what are you learning? And as soon as you get into that mode, what am I learning? That's a different question. And all of a sudden you can start to bubble to the surface some amazing learnings that we can take forward with us. And, even if those who are tuning in, if we were to ask that question to our team, if we were to ask that question to a colleague, I guarantee you'd have a different quality of conversation, and you're surfacing these perspectives, these insights, how you can start to take them forward with you in a super powerful way. So I love the fact that, occasionally we're not pausing enough to be able to go, okay, let's look at this. I think I've shared with you before is that Bill Gates used to feel guilty about going on holidays until he worked out his best ideas came when he was on holidays, right? So he's like away from the day-to-day, he's got perspective. And, I'm big on current view to better view. And the way you get a better view is by asking and gaining new inputs, just like today. So he changed the label of that from a holiday to a think week. And as soon as he changed it to a think week, it was easy for him to do. So sometimes that language shift can be super simple to be able to take it on board. And I know, some of the learnings from tellers is going to be really, really fascinating, that they're gifts that you can actually provide for us. And I love it when we can hear from someone who's achieved a level of success, we can fast track that. And that's, to me, super important.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm happy to share. So I wrote down 5 things that I'd really like to get across today. And all of these some of them are stories, but many of them are very actionable, because we want to make sure that it fires something in us. And so, but the one thing I want to lead with, Michael, as I've shared this with you many times before, is I want everyone to believe in the gift of the accidental epiphany. We have accidental epiphanies in our lives every single day. Like there was no magic plan that came in and said, hey, I'm going to grow this business. Like, no, that was never the case. And many people are like, well, how did you come up with a plan to grow this business, 10X in 5 years? I'm like, that was never the plan. I had no idea that was the plan, and it was an accidental epiphany. And here is the epiphany. Here's exactly what happened. We bought the business. I was working on the spreadsheet. I literally was working on the spreadsheet. And as we all know, the spreadsheet is very simple. It's like, hey, what is the gross sale number that you put up top? How much do you make in commissions? And then so on and so forth. It breaks all the way down. So I put the existing gross sales commission where was roughly, in the total homes sold was 300. We had sold 300-ish homes at roughly $1 million a pop. So it was 300 million. Well, I was working on the math and I accidentally put an extra zero. So that became 3 billion. And so when I put 3 billion, suddenly the rest of my P&L spreadsheet, it looked not just in the black, but those numbers were like, I had to increase the column size to see. I was like, this is amazing. I was like, how is this possible? Something has got to be wrong with my numbers. And then I looked up top and I said, wait a minute, is that what happens when we hit that number? Because I would have never intentionally put that number on the top line, because I was just bottom-upping and understanding the numbers. And when I hit that number, I said, this can't be true. And I remember taking a picture with my phone and screenshotting it to my partner, Peter, saying, hey, how do these numbers look to you? They're like, great, but how are we going to hit them? And that's when I said, if this is the motivation, I'm all in. Because this gets very exciting for a lot of people. And people will say, oh, well, it's 3 billion in homes. So I'll tell you, that's over 100 million in commissions. Like everybody makes a lot of money when stuff like that comes about. And then when you have a potential sale event, you get a multiple. So just to make sure it's not a small number.
That's so cool. It reminds me of a situation that I had some clients doing a study tour. So going and visiting other clients. And this particular agency had a board that would fit 24 listings. And they say, yeah, we've typically always got 24 listings. And someone just casually happened to say, I wonder what would happen if you had a second board. So it was like, what? And as simple as this was, so what did this leader do? Put a second board up, and immediately they went to 48 listings. So sometimes we've got these weird limitations, like, well, who made that up, and when was that made up? And starting to play with, and I love the what if kind of mode that you go into so often around, well, what would that look like? And you don't have to have all the hows up front. It's more, well, what does it look like? And then, okay, well, let's figure it out. It's great.
And like, let's bring this to life for a second, right? So I think Neil asked this question, and the key part around actually having this epiphany is bringing it to life. And we have to bring it to life. Otherwise, it's just interesting. And once you break through a belief barrier, then making the how happen is actually a lot easier. Now you're like, hey, what are the pieces I need to make this happen? That's when Michael had went into, well, how can we make this happen? So the next step of the puzzle to me was, all right, how do we get this 10x growth? And I thought to myself, well, the first thing I think about, for me, the one linear component is the construct of time. So a goal without a time component is a wish, a desire, whatever you call it. And I said, well, this was in 2008-ish timeframe. I said, well, we are just coming out of a recession. Interesting. What do we do? If the economy goes in 7-year cycles, roughly speaking, well, that would mean we have 7 years left. I probably need a year to get this going. I probably need a year to sell, exit, do whatever. So that's 2 years, because I need some time to get this plan in motion and a time to exit. So now that leaves us with 5 years. And otherwise, if I don't nail this in 5 years, I have to wait for a second market cycle. And so I went to our board and said, hey, so we're going to go do 10x in 5 years. So there was no like math behind this. It literally was going to 10x in 5 years. And they all laughed at me. And they said, well, what is it going to take to do that? And I said, well, it's going to take a lot of focus. And that leads me to the lesson number 2. And for us in the environment, people always say, well, what does that focus mean? And there was only one focus for us. It was growth via recruiting, growth via recruitment, growth via people. We realized that we were going to do it organically. We were not going to do it by acquisition because we wanted to maintain culture. And we said, well, how do we grow via people? And that just means you needed to be out there with a great recruiting story. And we started down this path, Michael, for the first 6 months, and we had abysmal results. It was really hard. And everyone's like, well, recruiting is really hard. And I said, well, sure, but there's got to be a way. And I remember, I think I was reading this book and it said something like, I think we generally, when we're in it, we forget the most basic of things. Yeah. We forget the fundamentals often because we're operating a business. And it said, well, what's your recruiting avatar? And so I started sketching out this perfect avatar of this agent or the salesperson that I wanted at the business. And I said, well, he or she needs to be this way, that way. They should have this skill, that skill. And I looked at it and I said, this is a unicorn. I can never find this person. This person does not exist. Like, yeah. I'm crazy to do this. So I had this idea, and I looked inside the organization and I found the avatar. And I said, if we were to lose one person, just one, that would change the very culture, the profitability of our company, who would it be? I didn't ask who embodies ourselves. Like, if we lost this one person, it would change our company. Who would that be? And we only had, kind of 37, 38 agents at that point in time. So I could literally go down the roster, and I literally went down the roster and I go, boom, I know who it is.
Wow.
I found that one person and I sat down and I wrote everything that I know about, and he's my good friend today. I wrote everything about him. Who he is, what he believes, what he thinks, what are his skill sets. I just wrote everything around him. And I called our partners. I was like, this is who we're going after. This is the person we want. This person is real. We have this person in our company. Let's go model and find this person, because I'm not trying to find a unicorn anymore. And my partners were like, hey, Sharran, but like, that's not going to work. I said, why? We're never going to hit 5 out of 5. I said, no problem. 4 out of 5 works. So sometimes it's the true 80-20 rule of, hey, if we can get, if this is our standard of the avatar and we get 4 out of 5 or 8 out of 10, that's a good fit, because we could probably culturize or coach the other 20%, but you've got the core fundamentals in place. And so instead of creating the avatar or looking for the avatar outside, my suggestion is many of us run organizations where the avatar is inside. And we should just look inside for the avatar. Why look outside? And that probably took like 6 months. But once I figured that out, that changed everything.
Yeah. And what I love about this, Sharran, is the 2 questions I ask around recruiting is, who are we good at recruiting? Second question is, who are we great at making successful? And to me, the second question is the important one, because immediately that defines, well, okay, this is who we're great at making successful. Let's recruit them. And I've seen too often businesses go on a recruiting drive and they're recruiting people that their history of making them successful is so lousy. They'll turn around and say to me as a coach and say, recruiting doesn't work. No, there's no talent out there. It's like, okay, so you happen to be in the part of the world where there is no talent to be able to advance the goals and direction. And I think the other thing is, and Sharran, I think you might have actually taught me this, you've got to make sure that your vision is big enough for other people to actually, sit within. So if their vision is bigger than yours, they're going to exit. They're going to say, well, why on earth would I come and be part of what you're doing? And we could chat about this all the time. This is your time.
No, this is really good. But I also think, so a lot of people are thinking right now, from a universal principle of bringing people onto your team. We live in a distributed world right now. You can hire what we call snipers. They come in, they do a job, they leave. That's okay. That's good. I don't mind doing that. Human capital is on sale right now, and we can go do that. But the question I started asking too late. And in reflection, I wish I'd asked this question sooner. So if you actually take nothing away from today, I hope it is this, because this is probably the biggest gift I can give you. The question from a recruiting perspective that changed the very nature of our company was this. And Michael, the question was, does bringing this person on get us closer to our perfect culture? That's it.
Awesome.
Right? That's it. Because if all we're saying is we want to get here, this one person averages up. This is one person. And so now, if it's another mediocre person, you're like, okay, we kept the average. Well, that's not, does this person get us closer to our perfect culture? We wanted every single new person to get us closer to our perfect culture. And I think that perfect culture meant different things for different people, which I think is totally okay. But it forced everybody to think, oh my gosh, we're here right now, and this person will level us up just a little bit. And that, when you start getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 new people joining, every quarter, like that gets very exciting very, very quickly. So that's number 2, look inside for the avatar. Number 3 is, this goes to the 2 questions you asked. Talk about the second question is, what makes them successful? And I think there's 2 parts to the puzzle to that, not just what we can do to make them successful, but also what they can do to feel at home. And I realized, Michael, pretty quickly that a big part of someone's success was them allowing themselves to feel at home, them allowing themselves to use the tools, them allowing themselves to give up to the new staff, them allowing themselves to represent the new brand. And I didn't know how to solve that. And I realized a big part of that, you couldn't solve that later. You had to solve that earlier, because there was for lack of a better word, like the warmth of an indoctrination process where someone is actually coming on. And for most of us, our recruiting cycles are long. So I've been talking to somebody for 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 24, 36 months, and I promised them the dream. And there's this funny quote that my team always says, oh yeah, sure, there goes Sharran promising the dream, and we have to service the nightmare. Right? Like it's like, but that's not, I don't want to do that. So when my team told me that, I was like, well, why do you think I'm only promising what we do as a company? If we don't do that, you need to tell me, because I don't want it to be that way, because then that's a false promise in recruiting. And so we realized pretty quickly, Michael, that our company worked great, but our onboarding was broken. We just thought that whoever was there did fine, but getting culturized was really hard. So we stopped and we put an entire new focus on our onboarding process. And the funny part is this: in the early days, to bring this to life, in the early days, literally, the commitment was, we're going to create one onboarding concierge, one person. And so I literally would say, oh, cool. Hey, Jenny, Michael's gonna come on board. He's been here so far. Can you take care of Michael? Literally, Jenny sticks onto Michael, and Jenny's job is to make Michael's first 30, 60, 90 days successful. And Michael, we mapped out every day for 90 days. It was a 90-day plan. We mapped out every single day for 90 days. And her job was to run that plan. So she would literally on a weekly basis report to me. We have recruit number 1 who's on day 32, recruit number 2 who's on day 13, recruit number 3 who's on day 45. Like her spreadsheet was a Gantt chart. And it was totally fine because now we knew that if we ever had changed something, that process worked. And it was as simple, and we had 2 partners, 2 managers. So like our 4 key principles, literally this was a 15, 30, 45, 60-day check-in. So on the 15th day, automatically, I would get a text message that says, reach out to Michael and check in with him. On the 30th day, my other partner would get a message automatically that says that was the 30-day, reach out to Michael and check in with him, 45, 90. And in the 15, 30, 45, and 90, they felt like they talked to all partners. They felt they'd gone through the entire process. And the 90th day, they were so in love with the business, the best way we could help it. And it seems really mechanical to do that, but we didn't know any other way. We actually mapped out, we sat down on a whiteboard, Michael, and we did day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And we're like, no, that's too late. We need that in day 2. So we pushed that back in day 2. And literally we kept working that, and we got it to the point where it was down to a science. And then we realized that you could automate some parts of it. You could outsource some parts of it. You could delight some parts of it. And when we had the process dialed in, our delight factor became extremely powerful. Because now you could say the process ran, we actually had times when the concierge would send flowers to the spouse and say, thank you for being a part of, Michael's family. Like, can you imagine your spouse, can you imagine your partner? Can you imagine Shane getting that? Like, how cool is that, right? And so because the toughest connection point was that your partner made a decision to do something, you're unsure of this decision. Now that company is supporting you, and it completely changes the delight component. Absolutely. So we were able to do a lot more.
And so there's a couple of things I love about this. The first thing is, I think many times in that onboarding, we actually forget the partner in that process. So that's just a little quick win to put in there. What is your appreciation factor? A lot of our clients towards the end of the year will do a gift to the partner and let them know what's been great, what has been great about this particular person during the year. What have they done that's really stood out, and thank them for that. So brilliant. The other thing is, Sharran, quite often when someone joins a company, the first 90 days is, just settle in, just get used to it. Everything will be great. You chat with this person if you need any help. So it's really loose. And what I love about what you're talking about here is it's a tight process. It's a replicatable process. And, my favorite saying on systems is, if it's worth doing again, create a system for it. Is it worth doing again? Absolutely. So what's the system that underpins this process that's going to allow us to consistently deliver on it? Brilliant. Yeah.
And this leads us to the next almost extremely important kind of lesson I pulled out, Michael, because the reason we do onboarding is so that they can have a great feeling of warmth into the culture. Because once they say, I'm here to stay, powerful things happen. And what I've noticed about culture is, I didn't know anything about culture because I had never run this big a company before. But the growth was so fast that new people were coming, there were people coming on that I didn't know who they were, and that's fascinating and scary at the same time, because I don't know people at the big firm were growing that fast. And I realized that culture is not an event. It has to be built daily. It has to be built daily. So now the question was, that was the breakthrough for me, was when I told myself, if culture has to be built daily, and that was the gold standard, what do I do now? As opposed to, what should I do to build culture? The what should I do to build culture now gives you a how problem. And the how problem, it doesn't have a goal. So you don't really know whether you've actually nailed it or not. But when I say I have to build culture daily, what do I need to do to achieve that? Now I know that everything that I do adds value to that. And I also knew that it has to span, like we had a 450-mile footprint. So up and down the California coast, whatever the size of that is, I literally couldn't be there in person every day. And so how do we actually create something? So we created this conference call environment. This was the conference call days. And originally we started with a 1 call a week, which actually was pretty good, that my partner and I did. And we called it the Friday morning drive. The Friday morning drive was a 30-minute call at 9 a.m. every morning. And he would just dial in and we would just talk about a new skill, a new capability, something in the market, something that we're talking about, something that would enrich the ability for our entire company to do better. And it happened every Friday, and we get insane attendance because in Los Angeles, California traffic, everyone gets stuck in traffic on Friday at 9 a.m. So if that's the case, they should just dial into the call. And that was always called the Friday morning drive. And then when I realized that if culture is built every day, I said, well, why shouldn't we have a call every day? And Michael, we built this call infrastructure, which was, we called it our daily mastermind series. And every day we did a call, but it was themed. So Mondays we did a call on growth, literally how to grow your business call. That's all was on Mondays. I generally ran that call. Tuesdays was a call just on markets. Hey, we called it the market whisperer. We would just do the call about markets, how to talk about the markets, how to talk about the market structure, what was happening. And so it was very, when everyone was like, to answer the how's the market question, it was a lot of data and dialogues associated with that. Wednesday was prospecting. It's like how to actually fill your pipeline. So it was a fill your pipeline call. I was very focused on that. Thursday is what we called our deal call. It was a deal doctoring call. How do you become a better negotiator and agent? So it was like, hey, how do you use various tips and strategies to negotiate stuff? And Fridays we kept our Friday morning drive where we did our best practices call, where we interviewed one person from our company and deconstructed their life or their business and showed them how they were succeeding within the TELUS environment. So it gave other people saying, oh, this is how Michael uses the marketing department to grow his brand. This is how Sharran uses the transaction department to grow his brand. And it showed people parts of the company that they didn't even know existed because we were adding so many features and services so often. And Michael, we did this every single day, all week, every week. And every time you'd think that, oh, we should probably get our agents together, our team. You didn't have to. We literally had them together every single week. And it got to the point where after about a year, we recorded these calls and we shared them internally. But after about a year, one of our director of technology said, hey, why don't we start a podcast? I can put some of our old calls on these podcasts. We started putting our old calls on the podcast, and we were able to quickly be one of the highest ranked podcasts because we were publishing podcasts every day. And we were probably 4 or 5 months behind because we had so many calls scheduled. And our recruitment went through the roof because we had other people from our industry listening to our podcasts. And they would get more from our 6-month-old podcast than they would at their current business. And that generated conversations. That created the authority frame for us that, hey, these guys are putting out great content. They know what they're talking about. People knew me for no reason because they had heard so many of the things that I'd shared internally at TELUS. And that frame of the culture is important to be built every day. That changed everything.
So there's 3 things that I love about that. So awesome strategy. The first thing, and you just happened to mention this in passing, the I'm here to stay, like that is incredibly powerful. When you have a team member who says, this is my place, I'm here to stay, because there's no question there would be recruiters wanting to actually get to your particular team members. But if they go, if they get talk to the hand enough, they go, okay, TELUS is not a place that I can recruit from. I've got to go somewhere else because I'm here to stay. That in itself is amazing around that. So, a fantastic question for everyone who's tuned in to ask is, how many of your team members right now would say, I'm here to stay, and talk to the hand on a recruiting kind of mode? The second is, the Google concept of micro moments and thinking about culture in terms of micro moments. I know, Clinton asked the question around, what's your definition of the perfect culture? And to me, you know, one of the greatest exercises you can do is to actually ask your team, what does a high performance culture look like? And I've done this many, many times with teams, Sharran, and we literally get up these amazing qualities versus me saying, here's what a culture looks like. You can actually ask the team and go bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, you've got a benchmark there around it. And then the final thing I love is that you've talked about everything you're doing in your day is either adding value to the culture or it's detracting value. If it's detracting, we've got to ask the question, why are we doing that? Let's stop doing that, because the more we can add value to it, it means that we're aligned to that. I do remember this particular leader that would have a certain kind of meeting and say, Sharran, come into my office. So come into my office, and then would have this little blind flip. And if the blind flip like this, you would know, oh man, this is going to be a tough conversation. And it was just like, don't do that. It's the wrong thing to do. So brilliant. Awesome.
That brings me to number 5. And this is my favorite, and it's not going to sound easy to do, but because it's hard to do. And this is for anybody that has fallen in love with anything. The greatest thing that you can do in marketing is to build a universe. Build a universe. So like if you took, for example, you take the Avengers, the Avengers as a theme. There's very specifically, there's Iron Man, there's Thor, there's Captain America, there's a series, right? And you're tied into that series. There is Superman, and has all the stories around Krypton and Supergirl and Lex Luthor and how they came alive. There is Harry Potter. You've got Harry Potter, and like you've got each of the houses, and you've got Dumbledore, and you've got each of the books. There's a reason for this story. Everything is a story, because once somebody is connected to your story, they never want to leave your story. There's a great quote that says, people help support what they help create. Right? It's just like it blows when we suggest to people, hey, you should get some advice from people on how you build your next lead generation or whatever. You're crazy to just ask for their advice. The people help support what they help create. If you really want their help, get their help. If you don't want their help, don't ask for it, because people help support what they help create. And I think the one thing that we built this unintentionally. So this is me not taking credit for it, because I had no idea this was happening. We unintentionally built this universe, and this universe was, we almost had our own version, our own language. And we would say, like I actually would have agents say things like this, hey, because we get paid on the buyer and the listing side, so we get paid on both sides. There's a lot of transactions, etc. We would actually have agents that said, hey, Sharran, I wouldn't talk to Jimmy. He's not TELUS DNA. I mean, they would say things, and I didn't have to define TELUS DNA. They would just know that, right? And they'd say, hey, Sharran, in your sales power, we talked about this. The sales power was our language, where I would basically say, hey, we need to have sales skills, because if you don't have the skills, someone else has the skills, and you're going to lose. And the difference between you and someone else is literally your skills, your capabilities. That's all it is. So just up your capabilities. And it's super, super important to be able to do that. And we created this language where we would do our top 10 list. And so a lot of times agents would have everybody in the company would have this struggle by saying, well, I can't write as well as you. I can't think as well. And I'm like, listen, do you know how I write my email? So I would start to say, let's see how many typos you can find in my email today. And literally that would create this humanity. And I would write a lot of my emails in top 10 lists. I would call it Sharran's top 10. And now people will write back to me saying, hey, Sharran, here are the 10 things that I'm thinking about, or the 4 things I'm thinking about. It gave people permission to be a part of the story in their own way. And Michael, we would have openings and events in random offices. We would have people drive and fly to be at these events. Even though this was a happy hour in a small office in Santa Barbara, we'd have people drive 3 or 4 hours to be there, just because it was part of the TELUS family. So building the universe becomes super, super important. And that's when you built something special, because they all feel ultra connected to the story, because people help support what they help create.
That's fantastic. And Sharran, I remember Business of Real Estate a couple of years ago, those times when we can actually have conferences and have people in a conference room together. You talked about artifacts. Could we just talk a little bit about that as a concept? Because when you said that to me, it truly resonated around it. So it's sort of the language and then the actual items themselves. Can we just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a lot of, I call this the untapped success. All of us have a lot of insights, gold in us, but it's in our head, it's in our hearts, and it's in how we do things, it's in our habits. But if for that to truly manifest themselves, we've got to create something to show the world. And that can be as simple as, when people talk about, hey, I built this company on a cocktail napkin, and they framed the cocktail napkin, that is an artifact of success. That is the embodiment of the thought, of the feeling. And a lot of times I'll tell people, hey, that's cool, and Sharran, I want to chat with you. I'm like, awesome, share some thoughts with me on paper. Like, I want to see it, something come to life. People love the connection and the talking, but they want to see stuff come to life. Even when you and I are brainstorming, or, you're working with me, Michael, literally be like, you're like, Sharran, that's interesting. Let me show you. So you'll pull up a slide and you say, here's the slide. Here's the framework to walk through. Or, my favorite thing is I love drawing on a whiteboard. I'd be like, hey, let me pull up the whiteboard and I'll draw it for you so you can see this come to life. I can draw a framework. I can draw an idea. And I believe that if it's, like you've said, if it's important enough, if it's to do twice, you should build a system for it. I think if it's important enough, you should create an artifact for it, because why is it in your head? There's got to be a way to showcase it in some way. And I think the most important part of that, Michael, is two things. Number one, the artifact. So this can be a presentation material. That's cool. It doesn't matter what you say. The presentation material is for some people, need to find and feel and touch. They need something to come to life. They need to be able to touch and feel something in some way to feel inspired. And that's why when you and I are not, when we have to kind of do a lot over Zoom and not have a real conference, like, it takes away a piece of us, because we know that we can, like, we talk about this, live events change lives, right? Like, there's a reason for that, because there's a chance to showcase an artifact live. Like, I can show you a model live. I can show you things live, and live is really powerful when you draw, create, build, etc. Right? So the first thing is it actually can inspire live. But the second thing, Michael, is if you don't have an artifact, you can't get feedback. Like, I can't ask you for help on a model by just telling you about it. Like, if I said, hey, Michael, here are my 4 circles, let me show you how each of them interact with each other. And you're like, hey, Sharran, I think you're missing a 5th. Like, that makes more sense, because it allows the other person to interact with the artifact. And it's super, super powerful. And I think the artifacts of success are, if you've done something super special in your life, if you can't showcase it, you're doing a disservice to the world. And even if it's internal, use it for recruiting, use it for whatever, but that's an internal artifact that drives who you are. So just because something is in your head, it's not good enough. There needs to be I think a physical, digital, or visual representation of it in some way that allows people to build their own universe around it.
Yeah, Sharran, can I just show the guys? This is my coaching notes from yesterday. Okay, so my coaching calls from yesterday. So we'll just go through them really fast. You're familiar with some of these. These are literally all the sessions that I ran yesterday, talking about a whole series of components, and all of these, are in that sort of realm. This is the color coding we speak about, Sharran.
Yeah,
it's exactly that. It's and back to agency language, or back to business language. What's that language to actually bring it on board? I love it. And look, when you and I are having a chat, either I'll get the whiteboard out, or you'll bring up your whiteboard, and we'll say, let's have a look at this. Boom, 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 boom. And
Michael, if you have a chance, maybe give me some share access. I want to show something. I think people can actually see this, because this is an exact mastermind thing that I did yesterday, and for someone to see it and feel like, okay, well, let me actually show you how it is. And so this is,
you're ready.
We can pull it up, because there's a reason for this, right? So I'll actually walk people through this very quickly. Hey, it's very simple. We were talking about how you actually build automations. There's a process, a trigger happens, and you close the loop. When a trigger happens, you do that. Otherwise, you do a workflow or an automation, and happy things happen. Like, this is, and then the way you do this is there's a great format here, so we can teach everybody this. Anytime you want to build something, it's someone is escaping from something with no clarity, and they're arriving to something with clarity. How do you actually get from escaping from to arriving to? So we just said, hey, they're currently in a rented home. They're going to own a new home. They first need a strategy, then they need financing, then they need showing. So you go through the process, and each of these becomes a step. So now they're like, whoa, I understand. I know where I'm going, so I can build my own escaping from to arriving to. And this is the artifact. If you don't do this, and I can talk about this all day, but it doesn't really click for someone until you actually build it out live.
Yeah, yeah, it is literally brilliant, Sharran, in terms of how your mind thinks, and you know, you just take it for granted. But I think the ability for you to grab hold and say, well, let's put this into a model, let's put this into a framework, because once it's in a framework, then we've got something that you and I can talk about and build through. And I think back to business language, it would be really neat to go, all right, what are the 3-5 components that I really want to hang my hat on? And let's, for the next month, 2 months, 3 months, if you don't say something once and it gets done, you don't put, you know, here are our values, we'll pop it up on the wall and my work's done. It's something that we've got to make sure that we're living day by day. And I love that, you know, the micro moments. Culture is built on a moment by moment, day by day basis. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And you know, and Michael, you also say this, which is your quote, which is, you know, a confused mind stalls, right? And or is that's close, right? That's what the quote is.
Yeah, yeah.
And what we have to realize that there's a reason for that, because, you know, complexity doesn't allow for follow through. That's the reason. The more complex the framework is, they just don't know what to do next. For a lot of people, if you want a sales phrasing that can create enormous amount of safety for yourself and for your clients and for your friends, regardless of whatever you're quote selling, it is, here's what happens next. Hey, Michael, I'm so glad we agreed to that. Well, here's what happens next. I'm going to do blank, 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 and you're going to do blank, blank, blank. I'll check it on Friday. Does that sound good? The here's what happens next allows people an insane amount of clarity. And when you give them a model, give them a framework, give them an artifact, they know what happens next. And everyone wants this magical script or dialogue. What they don't realize is the here's what happens next is actually an anchor in safety. That's all it is. And whatever you say after, it's here's what happens next. I'm going to give you a hug. That works too. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. That works as well. This leads us into something which is exactly like, I'll fire through the 5 other things that I wrote was, here's what happens next in the future, right? Looking forward is if I had to work, you know, if I was working, Michael, if you and I were working with leaders today, building and growing an organization in these, to navigate these times, right? To navigate these times, I think there's about 5 things that are super, super important. And let me rattle off these 5 things. The first one is fact fluency. Fact fluency. I think it's super important for all of us to up our fact fluency. We have the opportunity to show up when we talk to our clients or our team to be ultra articulate about whatever is going on. So if someone says, well, what do you think about COVID? How do you think it's going to deal with the economy? If you don't have the ability to say, well, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I believe that COVID's going to have these 3 effects on our economy, 1, 2, 3. And based on those, we're going to do this, this, and this. If you can't say that, you don't have enough fact fluency. You just don't have enough fact.
Sharran, I might just get you to repeat that. You went really fast. Is it my internet or is it yours?
It may be yours, no problem. I'll do it one more time. So let's talk about the fact fluency is in a time where things are uncertain, we got to be extremely fact fluent. So we know the questions we're going to get asked. We know we're going to get asked, hey, what's going to happen in this COVID? Like I've been talking about a COVID sensitive world. Not a post-COVID world or a COVID sensitive. We're going to be living in a COVID sensitive world for a while. And we can say, well, you know, market's great. My business is great. People want homes. People want business. No, that's not being fact fluent. Fact fluent is saying, hey, there are 3 things that I've examined the market for, and these are the 3, 1, 2, 3. Based on these, my suggestion is to do these 3 things if you would like to do blank. You're so fact fluent on what's happening in the environment that it allows for insane confidence. Our fact fluency is what actually was going to drive confidence, because in a time like today, people are just uncertain, and confidence brings a lot of power to the uncertainty. So number 1, fact fluency. Number 2, I'm going talk about the confidence here. The leadership in today's world is about taking confidence and content. Those 2 things, confidence and content, and just installing them with cadence. Just because we show up with an amazing once a month Zoom call where we can inspire people and then we leave for another 30 days and then come back a month later is not good enough. Just because you put out a once a week kind of like, here are my thoughts on the market email is not good enough. Always think as a leader, when you show up, you have two responsibilities. How can I install some confidence today? How can I install some content, which is inspiration? Content is literally what content does. It inspires people to think differently. They're like, oh, I can take this and do something with it. I can take this and call a client with it. I can take this and change my life with it. I can take this and have more productivity with it. Content and confidence. Confidence allows them to do their jobs without any friction. Inspiration allows them to do their jobs better. That's why the content and the confidence are really, really powerful. The only way to install them is with cadence. And the cadence is we all have to commit to something that we do every single day. There is no leader that can show up once a week and win in today's world. It just does not exist. If you have to show up every single day, and that every single day you ask yourself, how do I give them confidence? How do I give them content? One of those two things. And it has to happen. And it can happen in multiple mediums, but we have to show up every single day. Your Sundays are not off every single day because someone else is not showing up at that time. That's number two.
So Sharran, if I can just sort of jump in on 2 points that are just like ka-ching for me with this. The first one is fact fluency. I love the line, here's what we know. Here's what we know. So there's a lot of things we don't know, but here's what we do know, and lean into that. And I created a little formula while you were talking through the content and confidence. That's content plus confidence equals commitment. Because in actual fact, if you want someone to be committed, they've got to have the confidence. They've got to have the content to be able to say, okay, I now have a pathway forward, gets out of that confusion mode and into clarity. I love it.
Yeah, awesome. Very quick number three, and I'll jump to number four. Whether you like it or not, we live in a digital world right now, and our personal brands are crucial to who we are. No one is showing up without Googling you. They all are. They're at least doing that. Well, if they've not met you, if they're meeting you for the first time, I'm Googling every single person I meet for the first time. And you can be sure, especially if they haven't met you and you're a high ticket service, they're going to hire you, retain you, have you represent their brand in some way. You're a copywriter, whatever. They're going to Google you at least once. And all I'm going to suggest is this. You don't have to do much. Just go Google yourself and see what shows up. And if it's not what you like, you have an opportunity to fix it. That's all I'm going to say, because I think that there's an opportunity there, because there's no reason to ignore that. People are Googling us. It's fine. Google yourself, see what shows up. And then if you say, wow, I don't like that article showing up as first or second, or I don't like this showing up. And the one thing you will find is this: close to 80% of what shows up on the first page of Google is completely controlled by you. And that should be very and out of that 80%, most of it is social media sites, because they have higher authority. So even if you're somewhat active on them and what you post on them, you can literally bury anything that you don't want the world to see. And that's your call from a personal brand perspective. But no, people are Googling you. Look on a look forward basis. They are going to make snap judgments. So allow your brand to shine through when someone Googles you. That's number two. Number four. Michael, you and I talk a lot about this. I think it's super important every quarter, even if it's over dinner or a pint or whenever, to ask our teams this question, kind of the three-year look, the three-year hypothesis. And I have three questions I generally use. I've been using this for the last 5 years. So let me offer the three questions. You bring your team together, and it's very hard for the team to say, well, what's our 3-year vision? Like, that's hard to do. I'll tell you right now, it's super hard to do. So I like asking a different question. And here are my three questions I like asking. Question number one is, what is the world going to look like in 3 years? And I just want people to talk. Oh, I think that, this market's going to be better than that market. I think we're going to, we're going to not use Zoom and use Skype. I think we're going to do more virtually than in person. I think the people will just start talking, and that creates momentum and thinking. And my second question is, the next two questions are super important. What is definitely going to change? What is definitely going to change? Because that gives us some things that we need to look at. And my third question is, what is not going to change? If we ask those three questions, even if it's a retreat where you just say we're going to do it casually over dinner, everyone is going to go around and talk about this. You don't have to be in a formal setting, but especially those last two questions. What do you think is going to change? And someone has to talk about the one thing they believe is going to change. And if you find a pattern in that, it's really powerful. But what is one thing that is not going to change? That's really good too. So those are the three things. And last but not least, I want to finish up with this, Michael, is the way we truly grow a business is at some point to not become a commodity. Because I think the more of a commodity that we are, the more marketing we have to do. And marketing is just getting more and more expensive. And then, now you have to retain them. And once you have to do a lot of marketing, you have to cut fees, et cetera. So my question always is, whenever I talk to anybody, the first question I ask is, well, what is your unfair advantage? What is your only statement? What is your only statement? We are the only company in Sydney that can do blank. And you can actually make it tighter. We are the only company in Sydney in the last 5 years that has done blank. We're the only company right here in Paddington that has done like you can be as tight as you want, but we need an only statement. The only statement is your unfair advantage, because the only statement anchors more safety. Because when you have the only statement, it allows you to rally the entire business around it. The culture will build around it. The teams will build around it. And you'll know that that's why you're there and that's why you're there to serve. So the only statement is extremely, extremely powerful. And I'll give you the only statement for TELUS. Our only statement was looking at our agents. Our only statement was, it is our commitment that we are the only company that if you have 7 or more listings a year, we save you 1 full day a week. That's it. We're the only company that if you take 7 or more listings a year, we save you 1 full day a week. What would you do with an extra 52 days a year? So can I give you back 52 days a year? And that was our value prop, and everything was built around that. When you can give that, then you can actually create conversation around it. So the faster we can get to our only statement on a look forward basis, the easier it is to rally all our messaging around that.
And Sharran, one of the things I love in your recruiting process with TELUS, you would actually ask the question, what would you do with that extra day? And some would say, I'd actually connect with my family, I'd stack it up and go on a holiday, or I'd grow my business. And it would just give you such an insight as to, well, what's their pathway, and then how can you tap into it? It's brilliant. Look, we are on time. I am seriously impressed with how we rapidly went through those future views. The thing I love about it is, even though we went through them rapidly, the level of clarity that you've presented today, looking back and looking forward, has just been extraordinary. This is a blueprint, Sharran, for a business, any business that is wanting to transform itself in the next 12 months. Take this on board, listen to this multiple times, and truly internalize it. So, Neil made the point. The reason why the connection was a bit iffy before was there was so much content coming in gold coming through. The internet just couldn't handle it. So I love that, Neil. Well done around it. So Sharran, the best way to connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, but I'd love to give everybody some kind of gift, because we should all come bearing gifts. So if this was helpful to you, I recorded this thing called the 4-week MBA. It's totally free. It's 20 10-minute modules. It's my 20 best lessons from the last 20 years. So if you like this, then you will like that. So it's number 4weekmba.com. It's totally free. There's nothing on there. So just go in, grab it, and it'll give you access to 20 10-minute modules on my favorite 20 lessons from the last 20 years. Hopefully you can take that and benefit from it. So 4weekmba.com.
Sharran, as the last navigate for this year, I really want to salute you and thank you. At some point in time in the future, we would love to have you back in Australia, because you're an Aussie, you're an honorary Aussie. In fact, we gave you a present that truly means that you're an honorary Aussie, and you and I know what that means. And if you actually happen to be at that conference, you saw the official presentation. We will leave it at that, but you might actually share with the guys in a private situation at some point in time what that actually looks like. And I know you're smiling because you know what.
At some point when I have the courage to wear it, yes.
When you have the courage to wear it, that's a bit of a hint. Look, you're a great mate to Australia. We love you. We love what you do. We love what you stand for. And the insights you provided today literally have got the ability to transform. The only thing getting in the way now is implementation. And you know that favorite quote of mine, the power of an idea is in its implementation. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in, and everyone's going to watch this after the session to be able to bring this on board, collect this effectively, and then put it in place in a way that Rome wasn't built in a day. The level of happenstance that I think you've talked about today, Sharran, it's it's coming across something and not letting it go, saying, that's interesting. Let me actually bring that. If we maximize this, if we took this to another level, in many, many cases, when I go and look at businesses, I'm sure the same for you, Sharran, that's really cool what you're doing here. Oh yeah, we're a bit sick of that. Yeah, we don't do that anymore. So how come? It's so great. And I think what you've highlighted is those artifacts, bringing those things into play and building culture on a daily basis have an impact to be able to transform business. So thank you, my friend. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
Can we give Sharran a virtual round of applause or a thumbs up or something along those lines so he knows what that is all about? Sharran, just seriously appreciate you and the energy and effort you're putting into everything that you're doing. Thank you. Thank you.